It's Omnivision from the top rope. When you review a lot of phones, you might start falling into patterns and you start seeing some of the same performance or some of the same characteristics in a number of different phones, and you kind of abbreviate a bit of your review process because you understand what you're seeing. In the year 2024, if I were a betting man and you asked me, hey Juan, who do you think would give Sony the best run for their money on mobile camera sensors? I would have said Samsung, and apparently I would have been wrong. Omnivision has kind of come out of nowhere this year with a series of sensors and some strategic partnerships delivering results I never would have expected. Specifically, we're talking about the new main camera sensor on the Xiaomi 14, and this is the same sensor that's also found on the 14 Pro. Explaining some of my process, I'm taking this phone outside. It's a 1/1.3 inch camera sensor, so already I'm a little excited. The 14 is a phone that's really kind of purpose-built to do battle with a phone like the Galaxy S24. The 1/1.3 inch type sensor has been a mainstay. That sensor size has been a very consistent performer for several years now. Vivo's and Google Pixels, the new iPhone Pros with their main wide camera sensors closing in around that sensor size. So I didn't really think too much of that. I was just excited to see that sensor size on a smaller, less premium phone. But I'm out walking around with way too many phones in my pockets, trying to catch up on some of my nighttime photography. And as I'm shooting with the 14, it's doing a few things I was not expecting it to do. Putting it up against some of the shots that I'm getting from my OnePlus 12, and it's on a low light street lamp illuminated selfie that something finally clicked. The Xiaomi 14 is not doing the same thing. So I stage something a bit more directly comparable. I fire up the Pro modes. It's really dark, so on all these other phones, I'm maxing out the ISO 3200. We haven't been able to break ISO 3200 until we step up to phones that have proper 1-inch type sensors. Significantly larger sensors than the 1/1.3 inch type that we've had in so many of these premium tier phones. I'm lining up all these shots. I dial in ISO 3200 on the Xiaomi 14, and then I realize I can go further. There is an expanded ISO range on this Omnivision sensor. I can go to ISO 12800. It's kind of a small thing because we're looking at raw files here. And again, there's always going to be an argument at this tier. How much do we expect people might be shooting raw and editing those kinds of photos? But it also helps demonstrate just the pure hardware capability that as this phone is soaking up more light, it's able to give better data to the software. What Xiaomi has done, partnering with Omnivision, now positions this camera sensor almost directly opposite Samsung's most expensive slate phone for the year. And that's what's crazy exciting year over year, because we wrapped up 2023 looking at phones like the OnePlus Open and talking about this new series of sensors from Sony. The big claims about how they were expanding the light gathering capabilities. This has a 1/1.4 inch type main camera sensor, just a tiny hair smaller than a 1/1.3, but Sony's big claim is, hey, we can soak up more light because of this new stacked pixel binning sensor technology. And I don't think it's the same kind of stacked pixel layer technology that Sony is boasting, but instead, they're focusing on dramatically expanding the ISO range. In a different way, they are also improving the light gathering capabilities of this sensor, and it is closing in on the light gathering capabilities of a last generation 1-inch type sensor. Sony usually dominates these tech conversations as we look at the tip of the spear, the bleeding edge in new sensor technology. It's synonymous with Sony. Not just reserved for the main wide cameras, we've also seen Omnivision improve significantly for things like telephoto performance. Back on the OnePlus Open, the main camera sensor here is that new Sony sensor, but the telephoto is a new 1/2-inch type Omnivision. I don't know where Omnivision came from, but year over year, they are dramatically shaking up some of this smartphone photography conversation. Just a bit of nerdy fun as I'm still kind of wrapping up some of my samples and using these phones out in real world shooting situations, but this one really took me by surprise. On this channel, I will always be excited about better competition. And now smartphone manufacturers seem to have a trio of players in the space to pick and choose the sensors they want for putting cameras on the backs of our phones. And it's always so hokey when we get to the end of a YouTube video, but I want to ask a question so I get more engagement on your videos. What do you think, YouTube viewers? Do you think competition is a good thing? Because I'll answer that question for you. Yes, it is a very good thing, and competition from a company like Omnivision is going to put more pressure on Sony and Samsung to step up their game, and we're going to see an arms race in the future of mobile optics and mobile sensors. But what I would like to hear from folks out in the audience is, once we start drilling down into some of this more advanced use, I'm really pushing the limits. When I do these kinds of low light shots, I'm driving this camera a lot harder than what we expect the average consumer smartphone user might do. So if we had better consumer education on what these different features and what these different parts can really accomplish, do you think that would sway someone's purchasing behavior? I expect the tastiest of hot takes. I don't know, do you like competition? Down in the comments underneath this video. As always, folks, thanks so much for watching, for sharing, supporting this channel in any way that you support it. If that's hitting up my home site, SomeGadgetGuy.com, clicking on links underneath my video descriptions, or if you're joining the list of names scrolling by on your screen from my Patreon. That's patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. This list is basically the coolest collection of tech pals in the universe. So I hope you'll check them out. Now, you know where you can find me around the rest of the internet, at SomeGadgetGuy, basically everywhere. But these days I'm trying to spend a bit more of my time on the Mastodons, sharing a few more of my photo samples over on the Flickrs, which is better for photography, and a lot less so on the Facebooks and the Instagrams, definitely not on the Twitters. And I will catch you all on the next rambling editorial.